Good morning. About 10 or 15 people have mentioned my height. I tend to think it's because I'm at an Asian church. I could be wrong. Just throwing that out there. Just saying. Gotta say something. I'm really glad I'm here, partially because this is one of the first times I've gotten to see my sister Alicia speak, and she is phenomenal. Can we give her another round of applause? It's very, very hard to have that intellectual knowledge and also the heart and the ability to reach out to people. I think she exemplified that. I'm really glad to be your brother in Christ and to be on the team with you. Also, Cameron, you've heard him last night. You're going to hear him again today. Just a deep, deep intellect, able to wrestle with some of the deeper things in life, and I just love listening to him. So the fact that I'm here is really exciting to me. It's also cool because right now I'm taking Greek courses in Arizona, and it's 105 degrees in Tucson, and here it's 73, so I'm really glad to be here. But most of all, I'm glad to be here because we get to talk about God together. We get to talk about life together, and hopefully you'll get to know me, and I'll get to know you over the course of this session, the Q&A session. We're going to be doing a book signing session as well, so hopefully we'll get to know each other and get to know God more. That is one of the most exciting things that could possibly be, and we'll be talking about that a bit in this session as well. Who God is, why that matters. I know a lot of us in here believe that God exists, but for one, it's not an instant like, I believe God exists, therefore 100% I'm convinced. No, there's also ranges of belief. And one thing that I've especially seen among youth in particular, and it's not just you, I'm not just talking down to you, it was me when I was at that age, it was my friends when we were that age, it's a lot of us, is that we tend to believe in what we say, but then in how we think and how we live differently. And it's almost as if we compartmentalize our beliefs, our true beliefs from our stated beliefs. Yeah, we say that God exists. Yeah, we're ready to proclaim that the Bible is true. But when we live life and something hits us hard, is the first place we go to God in prayer? Or do we try to solve it ourselves? Look, if you believe in God, you believe in an omnipotent being who has had your problems in mind from the beginning of time and who can fix them right now. If you say you believe in him, but actually don't, what that might look like is you try to fix your problems yourself and you get more and more frustrated. But if you truly, really believe in him, do you find yourself on your knees in prayer asking him to resolve your problems for you? When you have a real belief and not just a stated belief, that changes everything. And that's what we're going for here today. Understanding how it changes everything and then hopefully working towards that direction. Hey, if you don't believe in God at all today, if you don't even believe that he exists, the whole idea of God is foreign to you, I'm really glad you're here. And I'm really glad you're being honest about these things with yourself and with others. And of course, if you believe in God here today too, I hope that there will be things that you will learn today, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions to learn more. Before we continue any further, I want to go to the Lord in prayer. If you would join me, and if you don't believe in God, then please give me a moment of space here to ask him to be present. God, we love you. God, it is because you exist that there is such a thing as love. And so, Lord, thank you for existing so that we can love each other and you. And we want to do that. We want to love you, God. We want to know you more. Because this world needs you. God, just earlier this week, we witnessed 298 people fall from the sky for no reason. They had no part in this conflict. They weren't doing anything to exacerbate the political issue. 100 of them were going to an AIDS conference in order to help people who needed help, and yet they fell from the sky, God. And regardless of questions about why evil happens and all that, God, we just know that if you are a God of love, like you've told us, like you've shown us, God, then we need you in this situation. Because I know people. And people aren't about to fix this. So God, we want to proclaim here that we know you, or we want to know you, and that we want to glorify you and proclaim you and get to know you more. And God, in order to do that, I pray that you would bless our minds and our ears and our hearts today with your presence. God, I truly believe that you gave us the eyes that we see with. You gave us the ears that we hear with. You gave us the mind that we think with and the heart that we process with. So God, I'm asking you to take the things that you have created and prepare them for you to do an amazing work here today. Through Alicia's talk, through my talk, through Cameron's talk, in people's hearts, God, I pray that you would reign and you would be sovereign, that this would be all about you. We love you, God, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Got a call last week at around this time from a friend of mine who, when I was a youth pastor, he was one of my kids. I was a youth pastor from 2009 to 2010, and he was one of my kids. I love him dearly, loved him then, love him now. And he called me to let me know that he no longer believed in God's existence. He called me to let me know, Nabil, I appreciate what you did. I still respect you, still love you, but I can no longer believe that God exists. I take a look at the world around me. This was his primary issue. He said, I take a look at the world around me. I see the suffering in the world. I see the devastation. I see how people are being hurt, and my heart yearns. He says, Nabil, my heart yearns. It makes me cry. It makes me hurt, and I would fix it if I could. You're telling me God exists and his heart is bigger than mine, yet he's not fixing this? I can't believe it. Nabil, if God existed and he had a heart like you say he had, he would fix this world. Therefore, I no longer believe that he exists. Do you follow that line of reasoning, by the way? Do you understand where he's coming from? And I hope you do. I hope you do, because it's a very powerful objection. It rings true with a lot of us. And for some of us, it might be far away. You know, I haven't lost anyone. I haven't lost a father or a grandmother. You know, the first time that that objection was brought to me in a very stark way was when I was in Honduras. I was in Honduras. This was after I graduated from medical school. I was on a medical missions trip with some other doctors and with some medical students to go and minister to people out in the mountains who didn't have any medical care. This was not a Christian missions trip. It was a medical missions trip. So I guess I should use the word administer medicine to people who didn't have any medical care. And while we're out there, we're rooming with other guys. The guy that I'm rooming with, his name was Big Dave. And, his name was not Big Dave. His name was Dave, and he was big. But we called him Big Dave. And so I'm with Big Dave, and I'm on my bed reading a Bible. And he looks at me and says, Nabil, you're reading a Bible. I said, yeah. He says, I thought you were Muslim. And I said, well, long story. But I'm a Christian. And he said, I used to be a Christian too. And immediately my radar said, whoa, what do you mean you used to be a Christian? Because in my mind, in my heart, and this, I'm not talking theologically, I'm just talking my perception, my person. Once I've seen Jesus, there's no turning back. Once I've seen that kind of pure love, I'm not talking about, eternal security. I'm not talking about theology. I'm just talking me, having gotten to know Jesus. How can you walk away from that? And so when he said, I used to be a Christian, I said, what do you mean? Can you tell me what happened? And he said, my baby sister was coming back from a party a few years ago with a friend. And it wasn't late at night. They hadn't been drinking. They hadn't been doing anything wrong. They're just coming back from a party. But someone else who had been drinking far too early in the day, didn't stop at a red light, ran the intersection and T-boned my baby sister. And as she lay in the hospital, I prayed and prayed and prayed. But she died. And he looks at me and he says, my baby sister died. I can't believe that God is real. And for a lot of us, the suffering that happens in the world hasn't hit us at home, and so we don't realize how powerful that question is. But it's powerful. How could I have prayed? It hit me in October 25th of 2012. It might have been 2011, but it was October 25th, I remember very clearly, when my grandmother, who I had prayed for ever since I'd become a believer. Ever since then, I had prayed for her every single day. My grandmother used to sit me on her lap and read the Quran to me. She used to recite it. She'd use her right hand, and she'd point with her middle finger, because that was okay in that culture. I still think it's funny. She'd point with her middle finger through the Quran, and she'd go along and she'd look over at me, making sure that I understood how to recite the Quran too. Since I was 3, 4, 5 years old, I remember that. She had a beautiful laugh, and she loved people. I prayed for her every day I became a believer for her to know Jesus. October 25th, she died. And all of a sudden, I'm in crisis. What happened? This is a woman who loved people. This is a woman who, as best as she knew how, loved God. And it hit me close to home. Just today, the Christian community in Iraq has been expelled under threat of death. The whole community under the Islamic State known as ISIS. They were given a warning. They said up until 9 a.m. on Saturday, and that's not just a few hours ago. This was in Iraq, so about half a day ago now. But Saturday, you have until 9 a.m. to leave, or we can kill you. And by the way, a lot of them had already left. We're talking about the community of Nineveh. Over 2,000 years. Approximately 2,000 years. There's been a Christian community there praying every Sunday, offering a church service, going to Mass or going to the church every Sunday for 2,000 years. In the past week, we have seen that legacy come to an end, and today it was final. Of course, the Lord can work in that. But right now, you have family, you have brothers and sisters in Christ who are leaving their homes, leaving everything they had, and going who knows where, and who knows who's going to take care of them. But it's not necessarily hitting us here, and so we're not wrestling with this question maybe. I'll give you one more example. To me, a few days ago, we saw Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 come down for no reason. It looks like it was a mistake made by the separatists in Ukraine. And I thought, man, this is horrible. It reminded me of the tragedy that was earlier this year with Malaysian Airlines. But then all of a sudden I noticed what route it was. It was Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. I flew that route 4 times last year. I might have flown it this September. That could have been me. Have you wrestled with these questions? For those of you who believe in God, a lot of the people you are going to encounter around you do not believe in God, and this may be the reason, and it is a powerful reason. But it's powerful emotionally. And we should affirm that, and we should address that. The fact of the matter is, as we go through the world around us, as we pursue through life, especially if you're still young, if you're still in high school or middle school, if you're going to college, you are going to encounter more and more people whose avowed purpose is to deny God's existence. How many of you here are in middle school or in high school? A few of you. The rest of you who are in middle school and high school haven't learned how to raise your hands yet. That will probably happen your senior year, I'm sure. A good number of you. I have a friend who told me, she went to the University of Toronto, that her sociology professor at the University of Toronto, note this is a state school, her university professor, sociology professor, said on the first day of class, "How many of you are Christian?" And a number of people raised their hand. He said, "I'm going to give you the opportunity to leave this class right now." And people looked at the professor and he said, "If you don't leave this class now as a Christian, I guarantee you, you're not going to leave this class at the end of the semester as a Christian." State professor. By the way, I quote that one because a friend of mine told me that it happened to her. There's tons of them happening here in the United States. A lot of people don't say it that overtly. A lot of them do not. But they teach it. And a lot of them don't even know that they're teaching it. Okay, this is what we were taught. When I was going through school, when I was going into medical school, this is what I was taught about the world around me. That the universe started with a Big Bang. This just became interactive. 10 points. The universe started with a Big Bang. And no one discusses who banged it, by the way. It just banged. And then as the universe continues to unfold and unfurl, things just happen to come into existence. There's no rhyme or reason apart from those laws of physics that were determined during the Big Bang itself. That is what created these galaxies. And you look into the sky and you look and see the stars, and we know they look beautiful and all, but that was all sheer random chance. And it just so happened that one of those galaxies happened to produce this solar system, and on this solar system there happened to be an Earth which had the conditions that just so happened to be perfect for the beginning of life. This is what we're taught, and we ask, how is it possible that all these random occurrences could have happened to just line it up so that life could exist on Earth? And people will tell you, well, it happened. It's just so. This is what happened, so it happened. Okay, fine, let's go with that. Let's go with that for a moment. Again, this is what we're taught in the universities. Students, listen to me now. As you go into college, this is what the people you respect, the ones you're turning to for information, the ones who are being paid to teach you information, they're going to teach you this: that the universe came about by random chance, and that life started because conditions happened to be right for it. That there was some magical mixture of lightning plus gases in the air that caused a one-cell organism of life to somehow start existing. We're not exactly sure how that happened, but somehow life started existing. Okay, let's go with that for just a moment. That one-celled organism then evolved. And we're talking specifically macroevolution as understood, origin of species, Darwin stuff. It evolved into you. And you're sitting here in this chair by what? Random chance. Now you tell me, if we're being taught that we're the product of random chance, that there was no intention involved in our creation, there was no purpose, there's no meaning that we're imbued with beyond the very utility that we can be extrapolated, that can be extrapolated from us, that we can be exploited for. There's no other meaning or value to us. What does that tell you about life? If we actually embody the messages we are being taught at at institutions of higher education, if we embody those teachings, what are we going to believe? We are going to believe that we have no value except what we can perform. And performance will be our total objective. If not performance, then sensuality, what we can experience. And all of a sudden, you see drugs, sex, rock and roll take off as the intended pursuit of man, because we don't have any meaning. We're accidents. The world happened to bang a certain way, and the universe spun a certain way, that these molecules ended up here, and that's what I am, the sum collection of physical matter and physical processes. You know what that also means for our minds? What that also means for our minds is that right now you think you're thinking. You think you're thinking. But everything that's happening here, these electrical signals that are being sent, the synapses firing, all that is not you thinking as much as a Coke can sitting on a table and fizzing. You're fizzing. It's just biology and physics. It's not. There's nothing more to it than that. That's what we are being taught. Oh, and I was taught in medical school to think this way. So how am I, as a physician, supposed to see others? Why am I supposed to care for them when I am only taught to see them as a bundle of carbon and electricity and nothing more? You know, it was this line of thinking, this naturalistic mode of thinking, when you take God out of the equation, it was this line of thinking that led to some of the worst atrocities we've ever seen in human history. What happened was when we took God out of the equation, people realized, okay, we're just here to survive. That's all we can really do is survive. Somehow we've sprung up as a species. You know, Homo sapiens, we somehow sprung up, and now the best we can possibly do is survive. So in order to survive, what should we do? We should weed out the weaker components of mankind. We should take out the weak so that we can survive better. Doesn't that make sense? Yes, it logically follows. So let's weed out the weak and preserve the strong. That was called the Holocaust. That's exactly what Hitler was trying to do. He was heavily affected by this idea of eugenics. And the eugenics movement was heavily affected by this idea of the existential movement and the philosophical nihilism that was rampant at that time. The atrocities that we saw during the Holocaust are beyond description. Some of you raised your hands when you said you were middle schoolers and high schoolers. Imagine if any of you have younger brothers in elementary school, younger brothers or sisters. Imagine having them being taken away from you and being sent to a scientist to experiment on. Imagine 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds with dye being injected into their eyes in order to see if their eye color would change. Being stood out in the Siberian winters without any clothes on to see how long it took for them to die. Being castrated in order to see all kinds of things. Let's not get into all the details here. That is what happened under the auspices of the chief scientist Joseph Mengele during the Holocaust. What was he doing? Let's think from his perspective for just a moment. He's trying to increase the longevity of the human race. Because those people have no value. Those people have no value. Under this worldview, when you take God out of the equation, we all have no value. Is it any surprise, the moment we took prayers out of schools in the 1950s, that suicide rates among teenagers started climbing? You tell kids that you were never imbued with any meaning, then why should they think their life has meaning? Why are we so surprised when all of a sudden they start taking their lives from themselves? This is all the result of taking God out of the equation. Now notice what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that if you're an atheist, you can't be a good person. I'm not saying that if you're an atheist, you don't have a sense of morality. That's not what I'm saying. I know a lot of atheists who are very good people. I know a lot of atheists who have a well-developed sense of morality. My point is, the moment you take God out of the equation, what you've done is you've taken away any absolute grounding for right and wrong. And morality at that point becomes more or less self-defined. It's whatever you want to believe. Now let's juxtapose that just one moment. Let's compare that with if God exists. Hear me now, students, especially. If God exists, then you and I and all of us in here are here for a reason. You are not an accident. You're not here by random chance. If you ask yourself the question, do I have any purpose here? The answer is yes. Stop and think with me more for just one more moment. What if the God who created this universe imbued you with his image? And so in creating this universe, all the amazing things you see, those brilliant sunsets and sunrises, the beaches you see out in the Caribbean or in Fiji or wherever, or the mountains that you see in their majesty, all these things that look absolutely stunning and beautiful, if God created you in his image, you are worth more than all of those things. And not just you, but your neighbor as well. So instead of exterminating them or experimenting upon them, they are worth giving up your life for. Now you have a reason to travel to Africa or to travel to Australia or to travel to Asia where people are underserved, or even here in the United States where people are underserved, and pour yourself out for them because they're that valuable. Because God's image is on them. Now you have a reason to give of yourself, to be altruistic. Look, if you're just here for a few years and you're going to die, why pour out anything? If you're here by chance and all you can do is experience stuff until you die and that's it, that's the end, why bother helping others? Why not live for yourself? The best answer you can give is, because it makes me feel better to help others. Well, that's still selfish. You're helping others to feel better? That's selfish. But if God exists, and now people have real true value, and you say that person who's suffering is valuable. I'm in the United States. I'm in an air-conditioned room. I had breakfast. I didn't have to worry about any of the things that they're worrying about. Let me go and live for them. In fact, if I have to, let me go and die for them. Now you have a reason for that. Now you have a grounding for that because God exists and because he has put his image upon us. Oh, the difference is tremendous. And that's why I'm telling you here today, right now, that this question, does God exist, has the largest bearing on your life, more so than any other question. Any other question you can think of. The answer to the question, does God exist, affects you more. It is huge. How you're going to live your life. You know, I think about some of the friends that I had who graduated from medical school with me. I graduated in 2009. I have a lot of them who are practicing as physicians now. There's some of them have actually left the medical field as well already. But a large number of them, after graduating from medical school, I saw them go through this process. They said, why am I doing what I'm doing? I initially came because I thought I was going to help people, but the system is so messed up, I'm not really helping anyone anymore. I'm really jaded. I initially came because I wanted to make money, but why do I need to make money? For what purpose? It's not making me happy. And they're asking themselves these questions, and most of them ask the question and then assume there is no answer, and they move right on. And they never answer those questions. I want you don't have to raise your hand. I don't want you to raise your hand, but I want you to think right now, how many of you, either listening on the live broadcast or here in this room, have just been going through the motions, wondering why I'm doing what I'm doing? I'm telling you, I'm encouraging you, do not ignore those questions, because there is a reason for why you are here. There is a purpose for you. I honestly believe, and I get this from the Bible, the book of Acts, chapter 17, verse 24. And if you ask me why I believe the Bible, please do ask during the Q&A session. That God has created each and every single one of us saying, hey, it's Josh. I know exactly where I want to put Josh. Or hey, it's Adam. I want to put Adam right here in California in 2014 because he has these desires and he has these gifts and these passions. I need him here. And whether he does what he wants, what I want him to do is not the issue. I've created him for this purpose. I've put him right here. He can change the world. Every single one of you, hear me, look at me. Every single one of you in this room has been created by God to impact the world. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter what mistakes you've made. It doesn't matter what you're doing now. It doesn't matter what you did last night. God can redeem you, and he can change the world through you, and that's his intended purpose for you. Now, some of you might be asking, Nabil, this is all great, fine, dandy. I hear what you're saying. I am on board with you. Whether God exists or not is a huge issue, a big question. But can you give me reasons why I should believe that? I don't believe that. Why should I believe that? You know, I could be up here giving you tons of reasons why God exists. There's a lot of arguments for God's existence. There's one argument that's sound against God's existence, or at least that appears sound against God's existence, and that's the issue, the problem of evil, the one we were talking about. I heard a man named Jay Richards. He's an apologist up in the northern part of the country. He said, yeah, Christians have the problem of evil to deal with, but agnostics and atheists have the problem of everything else. Everything. How do you explain that anything exists? How do you explain love? How do you explain all? So really, there's just one issue here against God's existence, the problem of evil. And again, we can talk about that during the Q&A. Right now, what I want to talk about more is reasons for the existence of God. The first one I'm going to mention briefly is the philosophical reasons for the existence of God. There are arguments from philosophy. There's tons of them. There's actually a whole field of philosophy dedicated towards this, which provide reasons for the existence of God. The one that I find the most compelling is the one that Aristotle voiced many thousands of years ago, what he called the unmoved mover. Anytime you do something, you are the agent. You're the agent who did it. And something caused you. If you were caused at some point, something caused you. And I would say that's my parents, but we're not going to talk about that because there's young people here. My parents caused me. The causes go all the way back until there was some cause at the beginning that wasn't caused. There has to be some cause at the beginning that wasn't caused. Otherwise, there's something that caused him or it, and it keeps going back until there is a beginning. There must be a beginning. Up until a few years ago, up until the 1950s, people believed it was the universe. The universe has always existed. Now we know that's not true. Something caused it. There must be some cause, that unmoved mover. And what Aristotle also proposed, I believe it was Aristotle, proposed that it must be a personal agent, something that makes a choice to start. We call that God. We call that God. Now that might be pretty abstract. Let's go to a little bit more concrete. How about the Big Bang itself? If you stop and think about it, the Big Bang, like I said just a moment ago, it must have been caused by something. Nothing happens for no reason. Out of nothing, nothing comes. So what caused the Big Bang? Let's think about this. I think this is really cool. Space, the final frontier. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, space is comprised of time, energy, and matter. Time, energy, matter. And space itself. Energy and matter is often seen as one. So let's say that's time, energy, matter, and space itself. So whatever caused space, whatever caused the Big Bang, the universe, to come into existence, has to be outside those things, because that's what the universe is comprised of. So whatever the cause is of the universe has to be outside of space. It has to be omnipresent. It has to be outside of energy and matter, omnipotent. And it has to be outside of time, it has to be eternal. So whatever caused this universe is eternal, omnipresent, and omnipotent. Just by thinking about the Big Bang, we can come to that conclusion. Again, we pull in Aristotle's idea of a personal agent, and now we have to think, okay, this has to be a person. It has to be a force. Some person, something with personal agency started the universe, and that person is omnipotent, eternal, and omnipresent. That is an argument for the existence of God, a powerful one. From science. There's many more arguments from science. Many of you may have heard of the fine-tuning argument. We talked earlier about the world being formed, but did you realize that in order for life to exist on this earth, there had to be a whole host of conditions that had to be just right in order for life to begin? Some of these are cosmic conditions. For example, the earth had to be just far enough away from the sun. Any further, and life as we know it would freeze. Any closer, and life as we know it would melt. The earth had to be just far enough away from the sun. By the way, the solar system had to be a one-star solar system. There had to be an asteroid belt or some kind of shield protecting this planet from cosmic debris, and that's exactly what we have. Next to Jupiter, we have this asteroid belt protecting the Earth. It needs to be in a specific part of a specific kind of galaxy, a spiral galaxy in the armpit region. I could have thrown some bad jokes in there, but I'm keeping that to myself. They really stink. So the solar system has to be in a specific kind of galaxy in order to avoid certain kinds of radiation. It needs to be in a perfect place in that galaxy for heat reasons. It needs to be in a specific distance from the star, etc., etc., etc. The Earth fits all of those. And when you ask an atheist or an agnostic the question why, the answer they have to give is, well, that's just what happened. But that's not a good answer. That's a description. It's not an answer. If you have 1 million people lined up to execute someone, and they all take aim, and they fire. And then after everyone's fired, you look and the guy opens up his blindfold and he said, "Y'all missed?" He's not going to say, "Well, it just happened," and walk off. He's going to say thank you to someone for making that happen. That kind of thing, that kind of improbability doesn't just happen by itself. So the cosmic factors here, let me give you one more example of that, and I think we're going to have to move to questions soon. You know, gravity could have been set at any of a number of constants. And to give you a pictographical illustration of this, imagine a ruler with 1-inch increments. A ruler with 1-inch increments spanning the length of the universe. Okay? The whole universe. We're talking about tons of light years long, this ruler. Gravity could have been set at any of those inches, all the way across that ruler. But there's only one that would have allowed life to exist. And that's exactly where gravity has been set. It's because of these factors that even atheists and agnostic scientists, like Fred Hoyle from the UK, he's an atheist or an agnostic, I'm not sure which, he said, it appears, by the way, he's one of the guys who discovered the Big Bang. He says, it appears that some super intellect is monkeying with the settings of the universe. It appears as if some, and I say, yes, it does. Yes, it does. It doesn't feel like there is a super intellect involved because you can't really explain all these cosmic coincidences. At the very least, I would say it takes more faith to be an atheist in the face of this information than it does to be a theist. Of course, there's also argumentation from intelligent design. This is a totally different approach, and I guess, I'll skip this, but I'll just summarize by saying generally what I've seen in the media and what I've seen in descriptions of intelligent design hasn't been fair to the intelligent design movement. Most of the descriptions have not been fair to the intelligent design movement. There are actually some atheist and agnostic thinkers who are intelligent design advocates now. So think about that as you process that. They work with the Discovery Institute. You can look into that a little bit more if you want. The reason I believe in Christianity, in brief, is because of the historical evidence for the existence of God, specifically the resurrection. As I studied historically the evidence for the resurrection, I found it to be by far the best explanation for the events surrounding Jesus' death. So I looked into history and found good reason to believe that Jesus rose from the dead. Well, that requires me to believe in God as well. So there's historical argumentation for the existence of God. But finally, and I'm going to sum it up with this, these might not be intellectually convincing, they're not designed to be, but they are compelling, and that is the reasons from the heart. You are here with a purpose. There's a reason for you. You have a longing. You have a longing for an eternal life. Almost all of us do. We look at death with surprise every time it happens. Why? That doesn't make any sense. Everyone who's ever lived has died. Apart from maybe one or two exceptions, biblically speaking. But why are we surprised by death? It's what's going to happen to us. We have this longing for life. C.S. Lewis puts it this way. He says that if there's a common experience where everyone is thirsting or hungering for something, that must show that what they're thirsting or hungering for exists. If, commonly speaking, we all thirst, there must be water to quench our thirst. If there's food, if we're hungry, then there must be food to quell our hunger. If we all thirst for eternal life, therefore, that points to the existence of our eternality. That's his argumentation for it. I think it does hit the heart. But finally, this. What reason is there for the wars that are going on right now? What reason is there for my grandmother passing away? Or for Big Dave's baby sister? Or for planes to be shot out of the sky? Let me give you two options. On the one hand, no reason. No reason at all. It just happens, deal with it. On the other hand, we might not see right now. We might not see right now. But there's a God in whose hands this whole world exists. And we might not get it, but he does. And that's a very vivid image that I still have to this day because I used to administer vaccinations to young kids who, in the hospital, they would have their parents with them, and as we're administering the vaccination, they would look up at their parents and they would say to them, "Why are you letting this happen? This needle is about to puncture my skin. What are you going to do about this?" And they would start yelling and screaming, and the look on their eyes was one of utter betrayal. How could you let this happen to me? And the parents would be hurting more than the child. But they would say, "This has to happen. You'll understand someday." Oh, it's not a very foreign concept. We do it to our kids. It's happened to us. I'm telling you, that is an option. Maybe that's the way the world is right now. Even though we don't get it, there really is a reason for this. And one day, we will know. In sum, I want to leave you with this. If you are wondering whether God exists, keep wondering, keep asking, keep looking. Don't put the question behind you. because this question will impact you and your life more than any other question will. And then once you answer the question, and I honestly believe if you pursue it openly, that you'll find compelling reasons for God's existence. Once you answer that, then ask the question, who is it? Because when you meet that God in the person of Jesus Christ, there's nothing else in the world that can compare. Thanks. Let's take some questions.